Hi guys, Howard again. Today we'll have a look at the 1958 Yashica 35. Information on this camera is pretty thin on the ground, and the information that follows is based on my research via the internet, plus some knowledge from owning one. There is some confusion about this camera. Some people think it was in some way connected to the takeover of the Nikon camera works in 1958, but it appears that wasn't the case. Prior to the takeover, Yashica was actually the Yashima Seiki company, but after taking over Nikon in May 1958, the combined entity changed its name to the Yashica Company Limited, which was a combination of the two names. It would appear that the Yashica 35 had been in development for some time prior to the takeover, but was released about the same time that the takeover occurred. The early cameras had Yashima Optical Industries Company Limited on the back of the camera, so were obviously in production before the takeover. The later ones had the Yashica Company Limited name on the back. It's interesting that neither the early or late production had a brand name on the top plate, simply the number 35 and a serial number. There was, of course, a name on the front plate. There were some very minor differences during its relatively short run from 1958 to 1959, but there was only one option, and that was the lens. There was a choice between the highly desirable 6 elements in 4 groups Yashica f1.9 45mm lens. This lens was probably a copy of the Zeiss planar double Gauss design. The other option was the more common 5 elements in 4 groups Yashica f2.8 45mm lens, possibly based on the Schneider Kreuznach Zenitar. Information from sales brochures suggests that both these lenses had elements containing lanthanum, a rare earth, so obviously no expense was spared in the making of these lenses. Mine is the more common Yashica f2.8 lens. Although Yashica made many excellent cameras after this one, none quite had the quality feel that this camera has. At about 720 grams, it's not overly heavy, but just feels more solidly put together than those that followed. Okay, let's have a closer look. It's a very classical looking camera. Some claim it looked a little like the Nikons of the era, but regardless, it's a very nice looking camera. The top plate is a very nice rewind knob with a nice, very brightly coloured, well, not coloured, but very distinct little direction arrow, and a nice little knurled wheel on top that rotates. Now under that, there's another real knurled wheel here, and that you can use to set the film speed reminder, which appears in this little window here. It's very hard to read the numbers. They seem to have faded over the years, but so there's an ASA and a DIN scale. To change it, you just put your finger on that, move it around, and you can just set the speed there. Of course, it's purely a reminder. It does nothing more. It doesn't affect the camera's use in any way. It just means if you pick it up in a couple of months' time, you can look and see what speed film's in the camera. Moving across, we've got the 35 and the serial number, in this case 5102247. A cold shoe. If you're going to use a flash, you're going to need a lead, and there's a little post down the front for the lead to go on. Frame counter window here works very nicely, quite clear and easy to read. Fairly advanced for its day. It resets automatically when you open the back, resets to 0, so that's quite advanced for the period. A shutter button that takes a standard cable release, and a very nicely sculptured film advance lever that fits beautifully into the top plate. So very nice design all round. Now, talk about the top plate for a minute. It's got very sharp edges. And it almost has a cast look about it. Now, I suspect it wasn't cast. I suspect it was probably stamped, but nevertheless, because of the sharp corners and edges and everything, it looks like it could be a casting, and it gives it a real quality look. All the later Yashicas were much more rounded in their corners and their edges and everything, and they're obviously all were stamped out. But this one almost looks, it could almost be a casting, and it looks very classy because of that. While we're on the back, we've got Yashica Company Limited here, so it's one of the later ones, and Yashica Company made in Japan down here. So yes, it was one of the later ones. To open the back, little tab over here, pop it up, the back opens. It's pretty standard in here. Put the film in, you push the rewind button up, drop the cassette in, pull the film across. Whoops, I'll bring the slot around again. Yeah, so there's the slot. Put the tongue into the slot, wind it through, make sure it's taking up, wind through, make sure the film is sitting, the holes in the film sitting on the sprockets on the drive mechanism, and close the back. Oh, well, I've got the back open, which I haven't. I've now shut it, but I'll reopen it. It's got a very nice quality black crackle finish in the back door, and of course it predates foam seals. It's got material seals, and of course they're all still in really nice condition. No problems there. Okay, on the bottom we've got not a lot going on here, simply a 1/4 inch standard tripod mount and the rewind. So at the moment the little red dot's pointing to A for advance. Put your thumb on it, turn it around, and not quite there. And with the little red dot on R, it disconnects the drive mechanism and you can rewind the film. So that's quite a nice little system there. On the back, all we've got is, apart from the two where it was made, the viewfinder. As you can see in there, there's a little silver frame window that shows the area within the that's going to be taken by the lens, and that's quite advanced for this era as well. 1958, and it's got a bright line viewfinder, so that's excellent. If we go around the front, we've got the rangefinder window and the viewfinder window. They're a reasonable distance apart. It's quite a wide distance rangefinder, which is more accurate than the ones that were closer together. Now, most cameras that followed, the cheaper option was to use little mirrors in there. This has a prism, so it's a nice prism setup over here. So it's another quality touch to it. And as a result, the rangefinder is clear and bright and still very easy to use. And combined with the bright frame viewfinder, it's even with glasses, it's good to use. We've got the Yashica lens, the 2.8 45mm on there. We'll have a look at the lens barrel. So we've got the speeds here. This is a click-stopped ring, and it's from B all the way around to a 500th, and they all work well. That's half a second. Coming back, we've got X and M. So just leave it on X. M is only for the old bulb flash guns. So just keep it on X. As long as it's on X, you can use the self-timer. You can push it across and it'll give you about 8 seconds. I won't do it now, but it works well. It's quite robust. If it's on M, you can't move it. It locks it out. But with on X, you could use the self-timer. The shutter itself is a Copal MXV. So a Copal shutter, they were very popular back in the era. Okay, coming back to the aperture ring, no click stops here. This just moves smoothly between f2.8 around to f16, so that all works very nicely. Now on the bottom, as well as the self timer lever there, we've also got the rangefinder knob, so that works nice and smoothly. It's quite slow, you can't rush it, so it's quite a heavy movement, but it is very smooth. And around on top here at the back, this is where we've got the depth of field scale. So from 3.5 feet, or a bit less, around all the way around to infinity, and that's in feet only, that scale, and no meters there, it's purely feet only. Okay, now there's also these two nice little strap lugs near the front to try to balance it a bit. Now while we're talking about that, I was lucky enough with this camera to get a couple of extra bits and pieces with it. So I got a very nice solid leather original case, came with it, nicely lined in a sort of soft fabric, so you know, solid leather, comes apart in two parts, that unclips. So to have an original case for this is very good. Actually, it looks better in reality than it does on the camera, because the camera here is highlighting the that here. It doesn't show up nearly as much in real life. But anyhow, so I got the camera case with it. I also got the original instruction booklet in very nice condition. So, yeah, this tells you all about everything you need to know. So that's a nice little thing to get as well. And I also managed to track down at a camera fair some years back a genuine lens hood for it. I had to pay about $35 for this. The guy knew how rare it was and he wasn't going to part with it cheaply, but I was lucky enough to get this really nice lens hood for it. So that's great to have all those other bits and pieces. Okay, so I think I've covered just about everything. So I'll just finish up by saying what a lovely feel this camera has to it. Compared, I mean, I've got most Yashica cameras and a lot of other cameras as well, right up. I've got up to the GSN and GTN, the last of the Electros and everything, but none of them have the quality feel that this has. It really is a nicely built camera, and back in the days when they were really making lovely solid cameras. So it's a very nice camera. I'm going to put a film through it very soon, but so if you're going to try to track one of these down, there's not that many of them around. They only made them for a couple of years, and of course they're now, well, 1958 and 59, so we're talking 40, 50, 60, they're over 60 years old. So if you are going to get one, and they do exist out there in the markets, get the best one you can. There's no point, you know, paying $20 for one that's clapped out. You know, I've seen them go between $80 and $200 for nice ones. So it's just a matter of if it interests you. And it's of course, a very historic camera, because it's the very first 35mm camera that Yashica ever made. So it's interesting for that alone. So anyhow, that's about it. So look, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe. It costs you nothing and it helps the channel, such as it is. Anyhow, so thanks again, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.